are now joined by political analyst Lukhona Mnguni to reflect on some of the events of this evening. Lukhona, earlier we heard the IEC asking for patience, saying that they are investigating two incidents of possible double voting. Subsequently, you had rather harsh words or criticism for them, saying that at this stage one would expect more clear and direct responses from the IEC as to exactly what's gone on, asking a definitive response from them with regards to the indelible ink. Where are we heading from here? We're waiting essentially for them to come back to us with no indication of when can expect feedback on the investigations, and in the meantime results are continuing to come through, but that sort of leaves us in a bit of a limbo.
Well, yeah, in a way or two it does. In fact, the communications management is at the heart of the problem. The problem itself is probably not as vast as it is being made out to be, and it's being made out to be that way particularly because of the communications management of the IEC, because they had said that they quarantine results that seem to be affected by any glitch, either double voting, either issues where a number of ballot papers might appear not having been stamped, and this poses a problem as to what might have gone wrong. Whatever reason, they quarantine those. Now the question that everybody is asking, if that dashboard is moving, does it mean that all your Section 24A VAC forms have been captured? Because that's the only time you can know that a person has double written or triple written a VAC form. Now, if those results are coming in and not all of them across the country have been captured, then it poses a problem, because then you might have results that are declared that may be affected. It's all in the nature of communications management about how are you managing the problem and what steps actually get taken. And this is where the communication, for me, falls short. It's not just even a transparency issue, it's just about laying out the process that we follow. At what point in time do we actually receive information? Because remember, these two cases that they are talking about are not cases that are an outcome of their own verification processes. There are two cases that have been brought to the attention of the IEC. We are still yet to see whether or not the systems of the IEC will pick out any of these issues.
And also what we've seen is that the IEC responding to the people bringing those questions to them by saying, you need to bring us proof.
Yeah.
But is that within the ambit of the people who've picked up on those problems, or should that fall within the ambit of the IEC to say, we are going to go and investigate and look for the proof, rather than saying, well, until you bring us proof, we're going to assume that nothing untoward has happened?
Well, to also, discourage mischief, one would say, if you are bringing an allegation, there must be some prima facie evidence that has made you bring about this allegation, because otherwise, if you allow anybody to just throw an allegation, there could be a lot of mischief, which would unnecessarily tamper with the credibility and integrity of the process. And we do not want that. And I think we are in an era where people take opportunity and chances to try and mar processes for the sake of marring them, particularly if they're not going to favor them. So you want to make sure that you eliminate mischief, allow people to sort of give. I'd say if a person has given a statement under oath and they understand what it means to give a statement under oath, that should be enough a step to trigger investigatory processes. So I don't think a call for proof eliminates the need for the IEC to go out and actually investigate.
But as we continue to monitor the investigation into these alleged cases of double voting, how do we begin to balance the very valid concerns and this message coming from the IEC essentially that we need to avoid becoming hysterical about the scale of the issue?
We can only avoid to become hysterical about the scale of the issue once I think all processes have been done, votes have been captured, because if for example, you end up with 10,000 cases of potential double voting, that may begin to say there was coordinated effort. We would need to know which areas are we dealing with. Is it countrywide? Is it isolated to particular provinces? What are the dynamics in those provinces? Who are the people behind it? I'm still not convinced that a huge number of people independently could just decide they want to double vote. I mean, voting once is a task on its own for some people. Now doing it twice or thrice becomes a cumbersome process even for them. So I'd be really interested if that were to be the case. Is it possible that some things might be underplayed, underreported? That will be dependent on how robust the party liaison committee treats some of these matters that come or are flagged as potential problems. But as it stands now, political parties are saying, I mean, you saw the insert there by Deirdre Carter saying that she tried with 3 different voting stations just to test the scanner, whether it does say you have been scanned or not. Clearly it doesn't do that. So it's quite clear that this is the only marker of whether a person has voted or not.
I want to ask you this. Is it, what we're dealing with here this morning, is it the IEC's good reputation working against them that's made this such a scandalous issue right now?
Now, what you might have is that not many people have concerned themselves about the actual system that governs the voting process. And now more and more people are becoming concerned about the system itself because political competition is growing. The reputation of the IEC, what it does is that at times it limits the possibility for people to hold the IEC robustly accountable. And I wouldn't say it actually works against them. It works in their favor because people are like, you are trying to find fault where there isn't. The IEC is one of our most credible bodies. But if you are starting to have a conversation about the systems and the shortcomings of those systems and some of the loopholes in the systems that actually govern the IEC, that's where the problem is. It's not even people trying to find fault. So the design, what we have known, we have not worried about it. But because now the stakes are higher, more participants have a lot to lose, they are beginning to worry and flag the system. And I think the system on its own is found wanting, and we need to have a serious conversation about the system post these elections.
So the system, in fact, hasn't changed. I mean, earlier during the press briefing here by the IEC, one of the media asked, you know, it's the first time we find ourselves here. And essentially what you're saying is that that's not just because the system has changed or there's suddenly a flaw that's crept in, but for the first time we are questioning the processes of how we get to results.
And we are watching them much closely. And I think the spread of social media as well is beginning to create a situation where there are many more eyes watching on the ground, and as things come to surface, they quickly become a problem, a national problem or a national issue, and they are taken up. And the IEC, I think, are also not used to being to having to account in real time on all issues. I think for some time even the media would not even be aware of what is going on the ground. The IEC would rely on its structures and necessarily come to the media when they feel they're on top of issues.
That was quite
They've
evident.
Investigated. But this time around, the cycle is actually much quicker and much faster. And I think they are struggling to keep up with that cycle. I mean, there were times when a person here at the ROC would be asked questions during the special votes on what is happening in province X or Y, and they wouldn't immediately have responses, which would mean that at times the ROC here doesn't have a finger on the pulse on all provinces. So the turnaround time which is expected of the IEC is also increasing, and they are not meeting that expectation. But I think more people are watching the system, and of course, as you are saying, it's not like there's been something intact and it has been in a way badly intruded on. It's just that it was structurally weak, but we didn't care to ask those questions. And now I think, for example, just one issue about the scanners. If I am scanned, it should be impossible for me to be scanned again in another voting station. It's that simple. Technology, I think, has moved as far as to be able to design that without even going digital, but just to protect that entry point into the election process. That even if a person removes this mark, it becomes, at the point of occurrence, impossible to even move forward with the process.
So would it be fair to say then, from your reading, that between the announcement of this year's result and the next round of elections, perhaps the IEC needs to look at an overhaul of its systems to catch up with the times, and also the ever-growing political space that has become so contested that political parties, as you were pointing out, are now paying closer attention to every detail?
Well, if you listen to Commissioner Mwepia during the press briefing, he was quite clear that as the IEC, they've tried to look across the world at various digital platforms. They've made proposals to Parliament and various stakeholders. In actual fact, the people who are seemingly not ready to move are South Africans themselves.
Why aren't we ready?
Because I think there's a lot of conspiracy that has gripped society about digitization, the ease of manipulation of technological systems, the possibilities of hacking, issues of the interface of all the electronic mechanisms that would govern such a digital platform, who would be in charge of it, how do you ensure transparency, how do you validate, because at least with the physical ballots you can count and see. But I think if you scan around the globe again, people have put various mechanisms. In fact, the IEC itself has tried to improve its IT infrastructure. All political parties were allowed at some point to bring in their own IT experts just to check the integrity of the IT infrastructure the IEC was putting in place. So I think there is space, but we haven't had a proper conversation. I think the systems of the IEC must be opened up. And in actual fact, we usually talk about the IEC when it is time for elections. I hardly ever hear any talk about the IEC outside of the appointment of commissioners and the running of elections. So on the day-to-day, we are quite lax, we are quite forgetful of the IEC, partly again going back to that reputational question, that there isn't anything that can go wrong with that institution. However, if there isn't anything that could go wrong, we wouldn't have the amount of observers that we have, we wouldn't have the need for party agents at every polling station, and so that does already tell you that the system must be guarded, the process must be guarded. And I also think the other part is the lead up to the elections themselves. You know, what is it that is happening, what changes are being put, amendments to legislation and all of these other things. So the IEC is a body that hasn't received the adequate attention that it needs and its systems, and I think it's about time between now and the next elections, which is 2021, local government elections. There's a lot that probably needs to be discussed. And of course, as we have been electing yesterday, hopefully the new representatives to the National Assembly and other legislatures, we hold our representatives accountable and demand of them to create greater oversight, not only just to the operations of the IEC, but to the systems that run our elections.
And certainly we also need to be aware at this stage that we need to be heedful of those in the political landscape who might want to leverage any questions surrounding the IEC's processes to try and question not only the integrity of the electoral process, but in fact the integrity of the results.
No, certainly, without a doubt. What is beautiful, though, is that if the IEC does declare the results, those results would have been signed off by virtually all political parties. At the national level, all 48 political parties. At the provincial level, all the respective political parties that would have registered duly to participate in those provinces. If there is one party that refuses to sign the results, of course they've got recourse by way of review, taking those to court. And again, our courts have proven very much to be competent, impartial, and fair in how they adjudicate matters brought before them. And of course, as we know, we've got an appellant court system which allows a person to go all the way to the Constitutional Court. And of course, the question of elections would be a Constitutional Court matter by far and large. Probably it would gain audience at the Constitutional Court immediately without even going to lower courts. Got 11 justices there, and they would adjudicate the matter to the best of their ability. And I think we would all trust the verdict of that court. So there's nothing to be alarmed about. Systems are going to be imperfect. When political competition tightens, you are going to have outliers who may want to spoil the fun and everything. Allow them to do that as long as they do it within the due processes that are available in our democratic architecture.
And as we speak of the democratic process, hold on first, Lukona, because, and I'm hoping we can take this full screen, that is the leaderboard here at the National Results Centre at the Tshwane Showgrounds. The ROC is what the IEC is calling it. That middle column, the important one, if the national results are what you're looking to see, those numbers beginning to trickle in, I should say, as the various districts declare their results. And then on either side of that middle column, you see 4 provinces, 5 on the other, as we monitor the developments around the provinces. Which way will they go? We know that at provincial level, the voting there has sparked a lot of conversation about whether we're going into a further era of coalition politics, Lukhona, and as we watch this, and I've seen some of the parties engaged in some level of conversation here, the leaders seemingly more relaxed than during the campaign trail, I suppose laying the ground, if you will, for any possible negotiations once those results are declared on Saturday.
No, certainly. Of course, it is still early stages. We're just under 80,000 votes captured and validated, as it were. It is curious, the ANC is sitting at 40,399. That might actually be that Cyril Ramaphosa has just gained his seat as the first name on the ANC national list. I do think, depending on voter turnout, that will sort of be the threshold for a seat in the lead up. But I mean, it's very early days. The Eastern Cape seems to be the one that is capturing quite quicker than everybody else. If you're talking about coalitions, a province that has always been flagged for a possible coalition is the Northern Cape. Again, early days, we're anticipating probably less than 600,000 votes from there, but the ANC and the DA are neck and neck. If that were to be the case, up until the end, that would declare coalition, of course. But at this moment in time, the leaderboard is just interesting to look at. Very addictive stuff. You barely get sleep once those votes start trickling in. But I'm definitely sure this time tomorrow we will be able to have a much more substantial conversation, because I think the numbers, particularly from the much more urban areas, would have come in.
Certainly, definitely more pressure going to be building as more of those results start coming through. You're watching ENCA. We are coming to you live from the National Results Operations Centre here in Pretoria, and we'll continue giving you an update on results as they trickle in. Do stay with us.